What if your lack of power isn't weakness, but indiscipline? From the very first second, it's clear this is not soft motivation or decorative self-improvement. The discipline that turns you into a threat is never displayed, never shared, never celebrated. It's executed in silence, while others are still talking about intentions, confusing desire with capability. 99% believe discipline means waking up early, tolerating discomfort, and repeating visible habits. But that version is domesticated, acceptable, safe, and harmless to the system. It creates no real friction and provokes no genuine fear. The discipline that reshapes hierarchies is something else entirely. It is internal, sustained, and non-negotiable. And that is why almost no one develops it, because it demands the abandonment of validation, applause, and constant explanation. It's not physical strength, because strong men can still be irrelevant. It's not intelligence, because brilliant minds often fail to command respect. And it's not ambition, because wanting is not moving forward. The real reason is right in front of you, and you don't see it, because it makes no noise, has no visible form, and seeks no approval. It is the ability to maintain an internal structure even when no one is watching and nothing is forcing you to. If you move through this entire path, you'll understand how a discipline is built that changes your posture, your pace, and your impact without speeches. How a presence is formed that unsettles others because it doesn't ask for permission. And why, once you master this level of internal control, the environment begins to treat you as a dangerous variable. Not because you threaten it, but because it can no longer predict you. The operator doesn't transform all at once. He becomes a threat long before anyone notices. Most people never realize it, and that's the system's most effective trap. No one forced you to obey. You were convinced it was the right thing to do. From that moment on, defeat became voluntary. From childhood, you were rewarded for complying, for not disturbing the order, for waiting your turn, for asking permission, even when the ground was already yours. That's how an efficient soldier is forged. One who functions perfectly, but cannot break formation. The problem isn't discipline itself. It's who that discipline serves. A discipline that never trains you to say no, to withdraw on time, to cut emotional and operational supply, is nothing more than a polished chain. Sun Tzu warned that the worst mistake is obeying a formation after the battlefield has changed. Today, the battlefield is financial, social, and psychological. Yet you keep marching straight while others maneuver. The world doesn't punish evil. It punishes visible weakness, and constant obedience makes it obvious. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't lack character. You had too much predictability. And in any war, that's a death sentence. When you always respond, are always available, always comply even when you're losing, you train the environment to demand without negotiating, to load you with weight without compensation, to delay your advance because they know you won't leave the front line. Machiavelli was brutally clear. Power withdraws from those who don't exercise it. Every time you chose to endure instead of reposition, you surrendered internal territory. In modern life, this shows up as stagnant salaries, unbalanced relationships, and conditional respect. The system doesn't promote the obedient, it uses them. And when they're no longer useful, it replaces them without ceremony. Virtue without an edge doesn't set boundaries. It erases them. Everything changes when you understand this short, dangerous question. What if your reaction is exactly what they expect? In that instant, calm stops being passive and becomes tactical. Sun Tzu didn't talk about shouting louder. He spoke of waiting for the moment, observing without revealing intent, moving only when the strike is irreversible. In the modern world, that means not justifying yourself, not explaining your limits, not announcing your decisions in advance. Well-used silence destabilizes because it breaks the pattern. And when the environment can't read you, it starts measuring you with caution. This is where real discipline begins, controlling the impulse to respond, to please, to close conflicts quickly. Every second you don't react, you reclaim position. Every pause becomes an implicit threat. Don't confuse this with empty coldness. Self-control isn't the absence of emotion, it's supremacy over it. And anyone who can't govern himself internally will never govern anything external. In finance, power, and relationships, the one who stays calm under pressure sets the pace, and the one who sets the pace decides the outcome. Machiavelli understood that perception outweighs intention. A man unshaken by chaos projects authority without saying a word. This discipline doesn't seek approval or fairness, it seeks advantage. Because when you stop reacting the way you were trained to and start responding only when it benefits you, the world either adapts to you or steps aside. Both outcomes are victory. You don't become cruel, you become ungovernable. And in any system, that is real power. The moment you feel the need to clarify who you are, you've already lost ground. Real power never justifies itself. It manifests, and whoever explains reveals dependency. From that instant on, the environment learns it can question you, pressure you, demand proof, because it detected an emotional crack. Sun Tzu taught that a general who debates orders in front of the troops loses authority before losing the battle. Today, those troops are co-workers, clients, partners, and competitors who smell insecurity in every extra word. Explaining yourself is surrendering control of the frame. It allows others to define the rules of engagement. And once that happens, you're no longer negotiating from strength, but from defense. Here's the shift few understand. You don't need to impose. You need to hold. Real respect is born from consistency, not noise. When your decisions don't change under emotional pressure, when your posture doesn't dissolve in conflict, the field reorganizes itself. Machiavelli knew this. The fear of losing your favor weighs more than any speech. And that fear only appears when you don't react, don't beg, don't correct your image. Firm silence creates more hierarchy than 1,000 words because it forces others to adjust to you or withdraw. If you're tired of being tested, pushed, or taken lightly, stop confusing kindness with strength. Watch Stop Being Nice. It's making you weak. Strong people don't get tested. They set the rules. The question that separates the strong from the exhausted is brutally simple. Does this battle move me forward or drain me? Not every conflict deserves your energy. Those who fight everything end up weakened. Sun Tzu warned that the wise general chooses the terrain before the clash. In modern life, that means walking away from arguments, relationships, and jobs that drain more than they return. Withdrawal is not surrender. It's resource preservation. It's denying access. It's cutting emotional supply lines to the enemy. And that cold decision, executed without drama, is often more devastating than any direct confrontation. Nothing destabilizes more than the sudden absence of someone who was always there. It breaks habits, expectations, and dependencies. Machiavelli understood that power is also exercised by removing presence, by creating a vacuum that forces others to feel the loss before they understand it. In a world obsessed with availability, strategic disappearance is an act of silent domination. You don't explain. You don't announce. You don't threaten. You simply withdraw. And the system, unable to control you, begins to recalibrate around your absence. That is the moment you regain the advantage.
True hardness doesn't shout. It endures, because it doesn't seek approval or external validation. This is where most people fail. They confuse toughness with aggression, when effective hardness is actually stability under pressure. Sun Tzu spoke of armies that neither celebrate nor lament, because their strength lies in consistency, not emotion. In modern life, this translates into cold decisions, clear boundaries, and zero unnecessary explanations. When you don't react emotionally, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability is an advanced form of control. The final point, though it never truly feels final, is this: the greatest threat is the one that doesn't need a warning because it's already prepared to act. Machiavelli was clear: effective power is exercised before it's noticed, not after. When your moves are few but decisive, when your words are scarce but irreversible, the environment learns to treat you with caution, not because you're cruel, but because you're consistent. And consistency, without emotion, creates reputation. Reputation creates space, and space creates dominance. Here, you don't become kind or harsh. You become immovable. The first shot in any battle is neither physical nor verbal. It's invisible. Whoever defines how the situation is interpreted has already won half the fight. And most people don't even realize they're fighting inside a frame imposed on them. Sun Tzu understood this centuries ago. The general who forces the enemy to react on his terrain turns every opposing move into a disadvantage. Today, that terrain is emotional, social, and psychological. The moment you explain your decisions, justify your boundaries, or defend your position, you're already playing on foreign ground. And power, silent but relentless, changes hands without you noticing. Here is the move that disorients. You don't refute, you reposition. Arguing validates the other person's frame. Repositioning destroys it. Machiavelli knew that entering unnecessary debates erodes authority because it places the strong on the same level as the weak. Instead of arguing, you change the context. You alter the rhythm. You move the conversation where you decide, and the other person, without realizing it, begins to adapt. This is the art of commanding without commanding, of leading without announcing it, of winning without confrontation. Most people live chained to approval, to the fear of loss, to the need to please. That's why they're predictable, manipulable, and weak. The real break happens when you stop needing. In that moment, you reclaim sovereignty. Sun Tzu warned that the most dangerous armies are those that don't depend on loot or applause, because they can advance or withdraw without emotional pressure. In the modern world, detachment isn't coldness, it's tactical freedom. When you're no longer afraid to lose, you finally start choosing. There is a kind of calm that doesn't reassure, it unsettles, because it doesn't seek sympathy or consensus. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who doesn't react immediately creates uncertainty, and uncertainty weakens an adversary faster than any threat. When you remain composed under attack, when you don't rush or justify yourself, the other person begins projecting their own insecurities. Without lifting a finger, you force them to reveal their hand. That calm is not passivity. It's sustained pressure. The amateur's mistake is using force where presence would suffice. That waste leaves him exhausted before the real war begins. Sun Tzu insisted that perfect victory is the one that costs fewer resources, fewer men, less time. That logic applies today with surgical precision. Every unnecessary argument, every emotional explanation, every attempt to convince is energy that never returns. The modern strategist coldly selects where to invest attention, because attention is ammunition, and those who fire without aiming end up defenseless. Here's the lesson most people resist. You don't need grand gestures to create massive impact, only precise actions at the exact moment. Machiavelli knew that power is consolidated through brief, firm decisions, not prolonged spectacle. A well-placed boundary, a timely silence, a calculated withdrawal. Any of these can reconfigure entire relationships. The opponent doesn't understand what happened. He only feels that something shifted, and that shift, invisible but final, is the signature of someone who has learned to use force intelligently. Few understand that withdrawing at the right moment is a higher form of dominance. The inexperienced ego confuses staying with strength and ends up trapped on ground that no longer offers advantage. Sun Tzu taught that the wise general abandons positions before they become unsustainable. In the modern world, that means cutting sterile conversations, exiting toxic dynamics, and leaving arenas where your value is diluted. You don't announce the withdrawal. You don't explain it. You simply move. And that silent movement disrupts more than any confrontation.
When you withdraw with intent, you create a void, and emptiness is unbearable for those who depended on your energy, your attention, or your reaction. Machiavelli knew that power is also exercised through absence, because it forces the other to question what they did wrong, what they lost, and whether they'll ever recover it. By being unavailable, by not responding, by no longer holding what you once held, you transfer the psychological load to the other side. Without saying a word, you change the hierarchy.
The easiest enemy to defeat is the predictable one, because he repeats schedules, emotions, responses, and limits. Sun Tzu warned that regularity is an invitation to attack. That truth still holds in every relationship, business, and environment of power today. When you break your own patterns, alter the rhythm, and respond in ways that are unexpected yet coherent, you force the other to operate without maps. And anyone who operates without maps hesitates. Those who hesitate lose advantage. Here is the critical distinction. This is not about being chaotic. It's about being illegible. Machiavelli understood that coherence earns respect, but excessive transparency invites external control. You keep your values firm, but your methods variable. Your direction clear, but your paths shifting. This is how you build a presence that cannot be anticipated, a mind that cannot be manipulated, and a position that cannot be easily besieged. Real authority doesn't need volume, it needs structure. When your conduct is solid, your presence commands without words. Sun Tzu taught that a disciplined army inspires respect before entering battle. In modern life, that discipline appears as firm decisions, controlled timing, and non-negotiable emotions. You don't raise your voice. You don't over-explain. You don't seek validation. You operate, and others adjust their behavior around you. The highest level of dominance is not when people obey, but when they adapt to you without being told. Machiavelli knew this was the moment power became structural, because it no longer depended on orders or threats. People measure their words. They calculate their actions. They anticipate your limits, not out of explicit fear, but out of implicit respect. And when that happens, there is no need to close anything yet. The war didn't end, it only changed form, and you keep advancing without announcing the conclusion.